2020 didn't see a lot of theatrical releases, but you know what it did have?
The rise of the streamers.
It's a bit overdramatic for my taste, but he is correct. The streamers were up and at 'em. It was crossing the streams like crazy here.
Crossing the streams?
Streaming services. We're going to be ranking the streaming services today, guys, and how they performed in the year 2020, so stay tuned.
What's going on, guys? We are the Cinefanatics. My name is Robert.
I'm Chris.
And we are here again to talk about the top 10 streaming services of 2020. Before we get started with this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give us a like. You got any thoughts, feelings, opinions about this? Let's talk about it down below in the comments. And also, don't forget to check out our patreon.com/Cinefanatics. Jump on the tier that's right for you.
Come on. Do it. Do it!
And before we get started, guys, right off the top, just so you know, this is our opinion. What these are is we are forming this into a list based off of, one, our own experiences with them, and two, just a little bit of how we saw these play out in general population, so that you can kind of get the understanding of why, you know, maybe your favorite streaming service isn't number one. Maybe it is.
What's your opinion? Let us know down in the comments. Which one scored higher for you? Let's talk about that down there below. Starting with number 9, we've got, it's actually a tie, I would say, between Tubi and Vudu. Both of them are very low-end streaming services. They're not very widely advertised. Tubi definitely has a lot more hits on it and is owned by Fox, which I guess in turn nowadays means that they're owned by Disney. So another Disney streaming
Everything
service.
else.
Yeah. Vudu is also a very low-end one that doesn't have very many hits at all. A few rare gems, but both of these services also are littered with commercials.
Get ready to step out of the shower feeling alive.
So it's a free service, but you're going to be watching a lot of ads.
At number 8, we've got Peacock, and that is NBC Universal's streaming service. For those who have no idea what that is, it's also an animal.
Sticking out its peacock chest.
Yes.
Yes.
Encouragement, my friend.
Has nothing to do with the actual streaming service, but you know.
No.
Yeah, it's, for those who are unaware, it's also a bird. Who knew? Logo. It's the logo of NBC for some reason.
Branding.
The thing with Peacock is it didn't really hit the ground out of the gate in a positive light. There wasn't a whole lot available. There's a few movies on the service that aren't already picked up by other streaming services that were present. It's now got Parks and Rec and The Office on there. And these are reasons to jump into it now, but it wasn't the reason to jump into it in 2020 because Netflix still had those things.
I believe the downside with Peacock, though, is because of those TV shows, it kind of reels you in. So like we were saying, The Office is now on Peacock. For the first 2 seasons are free. You have to pay to be a part of the premium access to get the rest of the seasons, which is kind of like a bait and switch, catch and release, whatever other kind of fishing analogy you would want to make with a Peacock channel. But yeah, it's just, it's not going to rank very high right now.
Yeah.
So at number 7, we get to the spooky side of streaming with Shudder. So Shudder, so we had a subscription to Shudder this year, briefly, so we could do the watch along for Halloween that's on our Patreon channel. And I got to play around with it. I'm a big horror movie fan. Him, not so much, as you know. But looking around, they did have a couple of good movies on there, a couple of good hits, a couple underlying movies that I wouldn't have thought that would be ever on a streaming service. But I mean, it's good, classic, underground, unknown horror. A couple of rare gems in there. One of the biggest, I believe, was the movie that I ranked number 1 for 2020, which was Color Out of Space. That was a seemingly Shudder exclusive on their streaming site. So, a couple of good movies. I do recommend it if you are a horror fan and you're desperately needing to catch up on horror movies. That is a great go-to place for that type of content.
And the great thing is that if you look around in 2020, life was like a horror movie. So why not just experience a horror movie of a streaming service? I've got no experience with it, though.
Yeah.
So take his word for it. At number 6... it's not really a streaming service. It's really more so just all the cable channels that you might already have.
Yeah, if you have cable like any other weird person nowadays,
If you don't rely just on streaming services, who
So
knew?
depending on what cable channels you have, you do have access to some of these channels, like an on-demand website. Say like Cinemax has Max Go. You do have Showtime, even like AMC has it where you can stream episodes of The Walking Dead. A lot of these services, if you're subscribed to them through your cable provider, you could sign in to those websites through that cable provider and have access to that on demand. So go to Showtime's website, sign in with your cable provider, and be able to watch it for free. It's a great idea if you have that available to you.
Which is a remarkable thing because the cable's being cut in so many households. So if you're still one of those crazy households that has a cable running somewhere, you have access to actually a good library of stuff. So
Yeah.
I would check it out if I were you. But, how did that perform in 2020? I think just as much as
Anything else?
The same thing that happens to everything else.
That's why it's kind of hitting that middle of the list there. So many people have cable, so many people don't. So in 2020, it may be one of those last ditch things that people relied on.
At number 5 will be Netflix. And I know what you're thinking. This is probably what everyone would put as number 1 because, when you say streaming service, Netflix really is kind of the king of streaming service. Until 2020. Why'd you make a tiger noise?
Oh.
Yeah, so Netflix really came out the gate and kind of, I would say, saved the general population this year with their Tiger King documentary. Now, neither one of us watched it. We're not really interested in watching it, but we still have to acknowledge what Netflix brought to the quarantined community this year. And for a lot of people, that was a great piece of entertainment that kind of helped them make it through being locked in your house all day.
Yeah, here's the thing. I didn't watch it. Probably not going to. But it was a very huge thing in pop culture. It's one of those things that when you look back on 2020, what is the things that we remember in pop culture that happened during that time besides just the general of 2020? It's Tiger King. Tiger King is going to be one of the top things, and it's a crazy phenomenon. On top of that, though, Netflix did have a rough go of it with some other stuff that happened during the year. They had that Cuties movie that came out that had a lot of controversy and stuff around it as well. So it's kind of like, where does Netflix really fall on the list? I know for us, it's still got a pretty decent library of movies that kept us occupied throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And I know it's going to it keeps a lot of people occupied. So regardless of whether you fell on the train of hype on the Tiger King or about Cuties, there was still other stuff on the service that, got a lot of people through the year 2020, the year not of our Lord. In number 4, we've got Hulu. Now, Hulu is one that you do expect to be kind of closer to the top of the list because Hulu is known for TV. They've got so much TV on Hulu to access and to play around with that there is hours upon hours of quarantine-enabled content ready to go for you right there. On top of that, they're knocking out some pretty good originals in terms of movies and content also. One of the big ones this year that we really enjoyed was Palm Springs. That came out to be a Hulu original. I believe it was playing at festivals and should have had a theatrical release, but because of 2020 being what it is, it came to a streaming service instead. So that's one of the great things. Palm Springs was a fantastic little film. If you haven't checked it out, we recommend it.
I believe it made it on both of our top 10 lists.
It did in fact. But on top of that, Hulu just had so much to access, so much to play around with. TV, movies, all of that.
And the other nice thing about Hulu is with them now being technically a Disney Fox side piece of content, that there's going to be a lot more stuff that you will see coming from them in the future. So we will watch and anticipate what they will be bringing to the streaming table in the very near future.
He called Hulu a side piece.
Number 3 was Amazon Prime Video. Now, this is a weird one because this isn't one of those I feel like is right out the gate, your go-to for streaming. But if you happen to be an Amazon member like the other billions of people in America, if you have the Prime subscription, you also have access to Amazon Prime Video.
And what will happen is a drone will come to your door and will drop the video right in front of you.
The nice thing about Amazon Prime is they've gotten a lot of movies. A lot of very popular movies and a lot of very unknown movies. as well. They have a very huge plethora of videos that you could watch in that library. On top of that, they are just knocking it out of the park with their original content series. For example, I am a big, huge fan of The Boys. Also, this year, they did something that was absolutely spectacular by releasing the second Borat movie that we had no idea was coming until a month before it got released.
Yeah.
That is unprecedented.
So that's huge for like Amazon to swoop in there and be like, hey, we got a Borat movie coming for you out of nowhere. Which is crazy about that one because obviously that movie touched on the pandemic. It was shot partially during the pandemic, so there's such a quick turnaround on that. But it's that content that you get like about real life while you're experiencing real life, but it's a little bit better than probably some of these other stories. Regardless, Amazon hit it out of the park being able to present that movie so quick, and on top of that, like all the other content, you said The Boys, all this other stuff. Amazon is quickly rising the ranks as one of the top streaming services out there. So that's why it hits that number 3 spot.
Before we continue with the top 2, I want to remind you, go over there and hop on our patreon.com/Cinefanatics. Let's keep this conversation going over on our Discord over there. Building a huge movie community. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's talk about this. And don't forget to hit like and comment and subscribe. Coming in number 2 is HBO Max. Now, this one has been the one that impressed me this year, mainly because it just started this year and it hit the ground running right out the gate, which is funny because the number one thing that they actually put themselves out there with was that they were going to be getting the Zack Snyder Justice League cut. And that's what seemingly a lot of people were signing up for. But then they ended up getting so much more. You had things like American Pickle, which was a fantastic movie. Believe it was also in my top 10.
Did they just go from Snyder Cut to American Pickle? Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. My personal favorite, I do like the Turner Classic Movies section of this because they have some really good, what I would say, first run classic hits, like Singing in the Rain is on there. I've been able to catch up on a lot of classic movies that like I should have seen by now, and I'm still hitting those because they're updating them like constantly. I've also been a huge fan of like the DC Universe shows that they've pulled over from the now defunct DC Universe streaming service. One of those that I very much enjoyed was the Harley Quinn cartoon TV series. I think they've done very well with that. And their original content, like The Flight Attendant, what I thought was a great series, speaking of Kaylee Cuoco, and also their docu-series, The Vow, which is about like the NXIVM cult stuff. I thought it was wonderfully shot, very well put together. And I've been a big fan of the fact that they have all the Studio Ghibli movies on there. Spirited Away, fantastic movie.
Typically, people figure out how to say things before they turn on the camera.
Not us.
Nope. Welcome to this channel. Yeah, HBO Max is great because it has such a huge library of stuff. And I know that's like some of the reasoning we've given to some of these other streaming services, but the thing is if you actually dive into HBO Max and you start scrolling through TV and movie content on that streaming service, you'll realize that they've actually set themselves pretty far apart from a lot of the other competition. One of the great things, too, though, is that there was an announcement that they're going to be hitting a lot of the first-run movies going into this next year, which is really big. They already started with Wonder Woman 84 being put on the service. But as long as this pandemic is going on, they're pretty much going to be pumping out first-run movies on the service. There's a lot of stuff kind of bobbing and weaving. Some of those movies might have different deals being worked out, and who knows what the rest of the year looks like in terms of us being able to get back into theaters safely or not. But for now, they've made a huge deal. Obviously, Warner Brothers, this is their streaming service. So there's a big deal right there for all the first-run Warner Brothers content coming out on HBO Max. So as big of a year they had in 2020, I think they're going to have a huge year in 2021. So I would recommend hopping on HBO Max and checking that one out. And at number 1, probably would have guessed this one, it's Disney+. That's right, the streaming service that saved the day for parents all across the world. I mean, what else are you going to do during a pandemic? Everyone's stuck at home. You can't go outside and play with your friends. You could get sick. What are you going to do? You're going to put them in front of the TV with a streaming service that has literally everything that they love on it. We're talking about movies. We're talking about old cartoons. You got your DuckTales. You've got your George of the Jungle. I'm picking out probably more of the obscure things here, but you've got all your Pixar. On top of that, you've got all your Marvel, all your Star Wars. Disney Plus pretty much has everything. It was a huge package when it debuted last year, And moving into this year, that was such a huge thing for people everywhere. In terms of our experience with it, obviously we love The Mandalorian.
Yeah, so coming right out the gate, you had Disney Plus, which brought to you all like the classic Disney movies. So you got for your little kids, like he was talking about, you got your Disney princesses, so you could catch up on pretty much all of those movies. Like almost all of the Disney animated have been released from the vault onto Disney Plus. So that was a huge,
What's
huge
the vault anymore?
Yeah, who
There's
cares
no
about
vault.
And like we're saying, you also get Marvel's Star Wars, which was fantastic because those are the movies I know me personally, I could just put on a Marvel movie and just go about my business doing anything else and just leaving it playing in the background. Star Wars is great to catch up on if you're not completely caught up on that lore because that franchise is expanding and it's expanding fast, kind of like a vacuum in outer space.
Yeah.
So I know for me personally, I need to catch up on Clone Wars. Well, they're all right there for me to catch up on as well. Mandalorian has been hitting it out of the park as far as series on Disney Plus. It's a worldwide phenomenon. You see people tweeting about it constantly. So
And we talked earlier about pop culture stuff also with Tiger King over on the Netflix. Another huge one that hit this year was Hamilton being released on Disney Plus. This is essentially a live recording of the stage show that should have actually hit theaters. I believe it was actually scheduled I think it was scheduled for this year to come out, but they went ahead and pushed it forward, moved it onto the streaming service, and released it like basically a year early.
and saved the day.
I can't tell you how many times I have watched Hamilton over and over and over again. And on top of that, they also were huge about releasing first-run movies that we should have gotten in the theaters this year too. Both Mulan and Soul were huge releases. Now, you can say what you want about Mulan. You know, they initially released it for that $30.
That premiere access. And we were also blessed by getting Soul for free on Disney Plus on Christmas Day. And then, yeah, so they were the first ones out the gate with really that premiere access to kind of set a bar for like what streaming services may do as far as this first run content. Don't know if we'll see them do that again. I know there's a rumor that Black Widow might potentially maybe do that, but
I believe they're also thinking about doing that for Raya and the Last Dragon.
yeah, so who knows at this point, but a very strong performance from Disney Plus for this past year. Really like what they've done. Really looking forward to everything that they announced like on the Investor Day. It's going to be huge.
So many shows, Marvel, Star Wars, it's coming. Speaking of Marvel shows coming, this Friday, we are going to be doing our review for WandaVision. It's going to be the first MCU Disney Plus show that we're going to be getting here in the expanding universe of the Marvel Studios cinematic. You know what it is. So we want to have you join us this Friday. We're going to be doing it live. I believe it's going to be around 9 Central Time. So 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. You know how time zones work. That's going to be something fun. You're going to be able to join us in the chat and kind of give your thoughts on those first few episodes of WandaVision as well.
So that does it for this list. What was your list? Make sure you let us know down in the comments, or again, join us over on the Discord on our Patreon. Let us know what you thought of this ranking list also. Make sure you hit that like button. We want you to like it. Hit that like button. Also, there's a subscribe button that's up here above our heads, and over here off to the side are a couple other videos that we have made, and wait, we only did 9.
Yeah, it's because Quibi's number 10.
Oh, hi Quibi. Rest in peace.
Bye, Quibi.